Like there were some good discussions during the break around PSA crypto examples. That's great. We have got three more sessions to go. Uh, this session is going to have two parts to it. One is Hannes and Hanno are going to talk about TLS 1.3. We get a lot of queries as project maintainers around what is happening with TLS 1.3 and is Mbed TLS going to support TLS 1.3. So this might give you a preview on where we are and what the plans are. Following that, I will present a high-level roadmap of the project as it stands today. So with that, over to Hanno and Hannes.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I think you should see the slides and maybe also me. So I'm Hanno Becker. I used to work full-time on Mbed TLS for 2.5 years. I switched within ARM, so I'm no longer all the time contributing to Mbed TLS, but still with Hannes part-time working on prototype for 1.3, and that's what I want to shortly talk about. So just an overview to begin with of future or current or future TLS standards that we might or might not want to support at some point. Of course, TLS 1.3, you can really not call this new, but it's not yet supported in Mbed TLS, as we know. DTLS 1.3 is actually not yet standardized, but we are getting close to standardization. We have draft 39, I think, today published. So, and Hannes, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there are any major changes to be expected anymore. But it's a massive change in how it works from earlier versions of TLS and DTLS. So for example, the retransmission state machine is completely different in 1.3. Then there's an even younger draft. It's called CTLS for compact TLS. The goal of that is to reduce the size of TLS on the wire while keeping the handshake logic to make it more competitive, in particular with ad hoc. And then, of course, we have Quick as a replacement of TCP, which reuses the TLS 1.3 handshake logic. And so the questions arise is, do we, and if so, when and how, when do we want to support these different standards in Mbed TLS? And if for some of them the answer is yes, we need to also ask how are we going to accommodate for the large changes that these new versions of TLS bring. In particular, how do we prevent huge fragmentation across the stack if we want to at some point support all of them? And so currently Hannes and I am working on a TLS 1.3 prototype, which is public development. You can see the link on the slide. It's working as it stands. I'm not aware of any major TLS 1.3 feature that's missing from that. But the obstacle between that being available in upstream Mbed TLS is simply it's a prototype and it hasn't yet reached the quality bar that we have in Mbed TLS, and it will take a while to get there. So that's what we are working on mostly. We are going through the code, restructuring it, and the goal is to upstream it one piece at a time. You might have seen a few TLS 1.3 PRs which already started this. For example, we do have the key scheduling functions for TLS 1.3 upstream. They are not used in the stack, but the code is part of the tree and unit tests are available. And in parallel to that work on 1.3, we also have worked on a replacement of the messaging layer of Mbed TLS, where by messaging layer, I mean all the lower layer parts like the record layer, the retransmission state machine, things like this. That goes under the name MPS. It's also public, and which will facilitate moving to standards beyond TLS 1.3. But the goal is to get the prototype of 1.3 into upstream Mbed TLS alongside this replacement of the messaging layer. So yeah, Shebu will talk a bit about the timeline for this, but that's all I wanted to say. And it's quite a big piece of work. So if you are interested and if you have any bandwidth, as with all the other areas, we're working on an Mbed TLS, we very much value contribution to whatever design review, code review, and the necessary cleanup, even though if it's not very exciting, but it simply has to be done to get this into Mbed TLS in a timely manner. And yeah, just reach out to Hannes or myself or anyone from the team if you're interested in this, in particular, if you want to know more about how the prototype works or how this MPS thing works and what the motivation for this is. But yeah, that's it from my side. Shibu, over to you.
Yep. Thanks, Hanno, for that quick overview. Any questions on TLS 1.3? As I said, we see emails in the mailing list every now and then around 1.3 asking for like when it will get merged. Anything sort of on the technical side of things you want to ask? Okay, as always, feel free to post your questions in the chat. In the meantime, there was a suggestion that I present the latest Mbed TLS roadmap as it stands today. It's always dangerous to present roadmaps because it is often taken as a full-fledged plan of record, which is not something what I'm presenting today. Hope you can see my screen now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yep. So before presenting the items in the roadmap, couple of quick notes. As Paul was mentioning in the early part of the workshop, we have started publishing the roadmap in the Mbed TLS wiki page under trustedfirmware.org. So if you have any questions on the roadmap, please do shoot an email into the mailing list. What it basically gives is very specific items that, or high-level specific items that we work on the imminent quarter, and a very rough view on where we think features will land in future quarters. So there is, as you can see in this roadmap as well, we do a lot of detailed planning on the upcoming quarter, whereas future quarters, it all depends on how much progress we make on existing quarters. Because of the nature of the project, it's often challenging to predict exact timelines on when things get merged, because maybe reviews can take much longer than the actual development effort. There can be security vulnerability issues that takes a lot of the planned bandwidth from the existing developers. Then yeah, so many uncertainties around that makes it difficult to predict, have a full-fledged hardware like long-term roadmap. But we try our best to place things in on a quarterly fashion. So I can quickly take you through some of the strands of work that has been happening. We have covered many of those things already in various sessions. So as Jills was explaining, and then followed on by Henrik and Stephen from Silicon Labs, one of the main things for the project over the last 1 or 2 years has been the work around PSA crypto. And it's nowhere near completion. It's an ongoing piece of work. One of the main things that we are doing at the moment is taking the PSA crypto 1.0 specification and implementing those PSA crypto APIs over the legacy Mbed TLS crypto APIs. So that is an ongoing piece of work to update all the supported PSA crypto APIs in Mbed TLS to 1.0 version. So currently we are around, I think, beta 3 at the moment, but there are a few pieces of work to be done to make the existing PSA crypto APIs in Mbed TLS compliant to the 1.0 specification. We are hopeful that we can finish it off by end of this year. And that will be followed on by more work in the same stream. So that will be supporting the missing PSA crypto APIs. What I mean by that is APIs which are there in the 1.0 specification, but not yet implemented in Mbed TLS. It's a reasonably long list. There are multi-part operations. There is AAD things that came in a bit later on in the specification. So all those things has to be implemented in the project. Hope we can get started on that early next year, and hopefully complete it by end of Q1, early Q2. And then that doesn't stop the work around PSA crypto. Of course, the specification is also evolving. I think there's a 1.1 specification, if I'm not wrong. So there needs to be more work in PSA crypto, but there is an important piece of work around productizing PSA crypto. So if you remember towards the end of Jill's presentation, there's a graph which showed that, okay, the code size is slightly increased. All these APIs are being built on top of the legacy Mbed TLS APIs. I think Stephen also touched on that. So there is a piece of productization work around these PSA crypto APIs to clean up the code, these PSA crypto APIs using the low level function directly rather than being a wrapper over the legacy APIs. That's what we want to get started sometime in 2021 to make the code a bit more smaller and more efficient rather than having multiple levels of interaction. But at the moment, the focus is to just implement these PSA crypto APIs, and I can post these roadmaps. There are links which will take you to the Epic board that Paul was showing, that basically shows all the individual APIs that we are either implementing or planning to be implemented. And again, I'm reiterating the fact that if there are APIs that you can help implement, more than welcome to make contributions. We'll make sure that they're getting reviewed. And if there are things that you can help with reviews, please do that as well. So that's mainly on the PSA crypto user-facing API thread. From a roadmap perspective, the next strand of work is something, 1.1 is the future specification, which we are yet to touch in Mbed TLS. The focus now is to be compliant to the PSA Crypto 1.0 specification. The next strand of work is the PSA driver interface specification. So this is an effort we started towards the middle part of this year. And as you've heard from Silicon Labs, it has been an excellent collaboration with Silicon Labs in terms of reviewing the specification. The spec has been out for a while. We have got a lot of review comments from a lot of ecosystem partners. So thanks for all those comments. But now we are in the process of implementing that specification along with the efforts from Silicon Labs. So last quarter and this quarter, the effort has been around writing wrapper code for the interface, then also writing some basic test drivers for that. There's more to implement to complete the interface specification. And as always with these kind of specification, till we do all the required wrapper code APIs and test drivers, we can't be sure that whether there are any holes in the specification. So as it stands today, the specification is ready, but we want to get to a point very soon where we implement the remaining part of the specification. There is some auto generation of the interfaces using some Python tooling that is also planned. So that is all work to be done. Again, there's an epic called Unified PSA Driver Interface, which gives the list of outstanding tasks. Again, if there are things that you find is missing or things that you can help out with in terms of contributions or reviews, please do that. There is a epic in the epic board talking about all these pieces of work. Hopefully by early next year, we should be in a good shape with the driver interface. So there are more, the hope is there would be plenty of platforms during 2021 that takes this driver interface and implements drivers for their own crypto accelerators and secure enclaves, just like what Silicon Labs has just done. So these are the two major areas I would say is keeping the project developers busy at the moment. But of course, there are more things that the roadmap or the community would like to see. One of the most interesting one being Mbed TLS 3.0. So this is something the project has been talking about for, I would say, more than an year now. The original project when it was part of ARM, I think, was of the view that Mbed TLS 3.0 would happen in 2019. Things have moved on. The project is now part of TF.org, as I've said. We have shifted focus to PSA crypto, but still there is very much a desire to create Mbed TLS 3.0. It's just the PSA crypto and the driver interface work has taken up all the bandwidth. Hopefully by early next year, we can start preparing the project for Mbed TLS 3.0. The next presentation is going to talk about what is in scope for Mbed TLS 3.0, because from the conversations we have seen in the mailing list and other individual partner meetings, there is a level of confusion around what is Mbed TLS 3.0. And what is in scope, what is not in scope. So hopefully the next presentation is going to clear it up. The basic message is the PSA crypto or the driver interface work is still carrying on in full steam in the Mbed TLS 2.x releases as it stands. 3.0 is a point where we want to remove some deprecated APIs, make some legacy APIs, internal APIs, so we can have more flexibility to work on it. And of course, during 3.x, it will be all about making the PSA crypto APIs the main crypto APIs for the project. Again, this all requires a lot of cycles from very experienced crypto experts in the team. And that's why I'm showing Mbed TLS 3.0 as not something we'll definitely have by end of the first quarter of 2021. We'll definitely start putting efforts towards that while having to continue these two threads. So hopefully in the first part of 2021, we'll get to a point where we can create a 3.0 preview. So this will be, as I said, the point where we can remove a lot of deprecated APIs, make many of the legacy APIs internal, and then move on with creating 3.x releases where we do more cleanup of these APIs and shift focus towards making the PSA crypto APIs the main crypto API. And Mbed TLS, if you look at the Mbed TLS stack, now it partially uses the PSA crypto APIs. During the 3.x releases, we want to get to a point where Mbed TLS fully uses the PSA crypto APIs. And when we get to Mbed TLS 4.0, again, I'm showing it as Q2 plus, which really means it can be anywhere after the first half of 2021, where we create a Mbed TLS 4.0, where we remove all the legacy APIs and Mbed TLS fully relies on the PSA crypto APIs. But more details to follow in the next presentation. I know that many of you listening to this might be slightly disappointed saying, oh, okay, Shibu is again telling Mbed TLS is not going to be available next month. But again, this is where the project has to make some priority calls on the limited capacity the project has. And considering these two are going on in full steam, we don't want to stop any of these activities and pick up Mbed TLS 3.0. So we'll start work on 3.0 definitely early next year, but we need a lot of help from you in terms of reviews and being patient till we sort of gather more steam around 3.0 and start creating this 3.x. But one thing is assured that none of these things will anyway hinder our progress on the PSA crypto APIs or the driver interfaces. Following on other threads, so I think Janos mentioned it as part of the first presentation. One of the things that we have been working on in the background is a threat model for Mbed TLS and PSA crypto, because we often get comments like, okay, does Mbed TLS mitigate against side channel attacks, or does it mitigate against these sort of vulnerabilities? So it's quite important for such a security project to be quite explicit about the threats that it intends to mitigate. So we hope to have threat models for the crypto part by end of this year. And then the Mbed TLS threat model, I'm showing it tentatively a bit later on in 2021, because if we were to focus on things like Mbed TLS, that might be in the full-fledged threat model, we'll have to wait a bit. Other things, OpenCI, so many of the presentations touched on it. It's an important part of making the project truly collaborative, because today you as a contributor pushes a patch to the Mbed TLS GitHub. you get some results from Travis, but there are other tests that runs in the ARM internal test infrastructure, and you don't think of failing. So we will be working on an open test system for Mbed TLS and PSA crypto with our friends in Linaro, who has already brought up open test systems for TFM and TFA. So there'll be an Mbed TLS open CI, hopefully by middle of next year. TLS 1.3, Hanno just touched on it. So there's already a prototype sitting on a branch today. There is quite a bit of work in terms of making it production ready and contributing it to Mbed TLS. So Hanno and Hannes are spending part of their bandwidth pushing those patches into the Mbed TLS repository. Our view is hopefully by middle part of next year, at least there'll be some limited support for TLS 1.3 if Hannes and Hanno doesn't get hugely distracted. So it won't be supporting all the features that TLS 1.3 tells as a specification, but it will have fundamental things that's required for a device manufacturer to claim support for 1.3. I think that was it mainly. I think you will see most of these things stated in the roadmap in the Mbed TLS wiki page, but I just thought we'll go through it in case you've got any questions, or if there are areas that you would like to see coming in Mbed TLS faster. This might be an opportunity to say that, okay, you might want to collaborate on those things to bring it in any sooner. Any questions at this point on the roadmap?
Shibu, there is a question on the chat.
Yeah.
Frank.
I think I'll have to stop sharing to see the chat.
I can read it to you. When is the cutoff date for the TLS, DTLS using old Mbed TLS crypto toolbox APIs?
Jules or Dave, do you want to take that? I think it's difficult to set a cutoff date considering we are still planning Mbed TLS 3.0.
Trying again after unmuting.
Yeah.
Yes. So the likely cutoff date for the old Mbed TLS crypto, if you mean the Mbed TLS underscore thingy crypto functions, that's likely to be Mbed TLS 4.0, for which we're not even going to try giving a date. I'll touch more on this, but the idea of the Mbed TLS 3.x series is that those APIs will still exist, but they will become deprecated in the sense that there will be a less optimized path around the PSA APIs, whereas currently it's the other way around.
Sorry. Yeah, so I think Jules was referring to the 4.0 blob. So yeah, today we are on 2.x, as all of you know, and it's going to be quite a journey going through this 3.x releases. But during that time, all the legacy APIs are going to be supported. The full removal, yeah, still says at 4.0, which, yeah, at this point, it's very difficult to predict that many quarters away how things are going to plan out. Yeah. Yeah, and I think there'll be a bit more detail around 3.0 and how it evolves into 4.0 in Chils's presentation next.
Yes.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Kristen asks, planning any new LTS releases on 2.x? The current plan is that the last 2.x, whichever number we're at, will be an LTS.
Yeah. Yeah, again, yeah, Jules was going to mention it in the next slot. Yeah, that's another very common question we get as maintainers in the mailing list about what is the next LTS going to be or when it's going to be. So today we have got 2 LTSs, but I think one of them or maybe both of them are nearing end of life. Maybe there's one more year left. But yeah, definitely that's going to be a 2.x LTS before the big 3.0 happens.
Shibu, I sent you a question on the side. Somebody asked, is PSA similar to EVP of OpenSSL?
Sorry, can you say that again, the last part?
Look in your Skype chat. But is PSA similar to EVP of OpenSSL? I'll put it in the public.
Not really, no. Both are crypto APIs, but I don't think the similarity is that.
Sorry, I can't quite hear you. I just posted the question.
Yeah, so both are cryptography APIs, but beyond that, I'm not sure I see a lot of similarity.
Okay. Hopefully that answered the question.
Okay. So if there are no more questions at this point, let's go to the next presentation on Mbed TLS 3.0. Wills, can you share your slides?
There we go.
Yeah, we can see your slides.
Great. So the goal of this presentation is to explain what Mbed TLS 3.0 is going to be and also what it isn't. Shibu has already touched on that, but I'll go into a bit more detail. So why are we doing that? What's in it and what's not in it? And what is the impact and what does that mean for 2.x releases? So the situation today is that we have Mbed TLS 2.x versions. There are a number of deprecated functions in that, deprecated build options as well. And under the hood, or rather, no, sorry, visible to the application, there are a number of functions called Mbed TLS _ something for TL, and the library is divided into three parts. There's TLS and X509 and crypto. Those are three parts. And for the crypto part, since a year and almost 2 years ago, there's also an alternative set of functions, which is the PSA crypto API, PSA _ something functions. And in the long term, the crypto part is supposed to become all PSA functions, while the TLS and X509 parts will remain Mbed TLS something. But that's not the definition of 3.x. Maybe 4. Maybe that will be the definition of 4.0, but not 3.0. 3.0 is about making incompatible API changes. We use semantic versioning. So changing the first number in the version number means we're making breaking changes to the API. Mbed TLS 1 was the historical Power SSL interfaces. Mbed TLS 2 was those interfaces, but a little tweaked and all renamed to have an Mbed TLS _ prefix. And Mbed TLS 3 will still look fairly similar to what it is for some parts of the library. It still have an Mbed TLS _ prefixes, but crypto is going to be different, and to some extent there'll be minor differences in SSL and X509 as well. So it's a non-backward compatible change. Deprecated APIs are going to be removed. Deprecated means that it's eventually going to be removed. Well, the major version change is when we remove all of them. And also some APIs which are currently part of the public API are going to become private, so they will still be there in 3.0, but we will no longer commit to keeping them backward compatible. And that will give us the freedom to modify them in future 3.x versions. So those right. So in 3.x versions, as I mentioned, the interfaces of some of the low-level modules will change, and the crypto part of the library is going to evolve with an increased focus on PSA and a decreased focus on the Mbed TLS underscore functions. And increased focus means that new functionality at some point will be implemented through PSA crypto only, whereas currently there's still quite a bit of functionality that's not available through the PSA API. And also it means that instead of optimizing the classic API first and implementing PSA on top of it, we'll do things the other way around in in successive 3.x versions. We will increasingly have PSA as the primary optimized path, and the compatibility functions will be wrappers around that. Once again, switching the version number to 3.0 is not about new major features. We are not planning to introduce any major feature in 3.0 as opposed to the last 2.x release. The work that has started to upstream Hanno and Hannes's work on TLS 1.3 that is starting in 2.x and will not be substantially affected by 3.0. The work to implement PSA crypto API to extend the API is going on in 2.x and will not be substantially affected by the switch to 3.0. The goal of 3.0 is to remove some craft, various accumulated craft, and to make the API more abstract in places so that it can evolve in the future. And also to change some APIs which were designed, some of them over a decade ago, and over time we've realized that they were suboptimal. I'm not going to go through all of the changes, and indeed I don't know all of the changes that we're going to make. We've started to compile a list, and we know that the list we have internally is not exhaustive. We're going to review all the APIs and see if they conform to some design principles we want to apply. But just to give an example just to give an idea of the kind of changes we want to make, I'm going to give a few examples. So some APIs, as I've mentioned, some low-level modules are going to become private. This already exists in Mbed TLS in that there are internal SSL APIs that are private. For example, there's a lot of common code to TLS servers and TLS clients. And so the SSL client module and the SSL server module call into a common module, multiple common modules, in fact. And the interfaces of those common modules are internal, and we change them from time to time. They're not something you're supposed to use directly from an application. And we're going to do something like this with the crypto parts of the library. For example, the bignum module is going to become an internal module, which will allow us to change the way it works, and hopefully one day we can migrate to a bignum module which doesn't rely extensively on malloc. That's something we can't change without changing the API of the bignum module. We can also hopefully make the bignum module more time constant. We've made some efforts in this respect, but sometimes the big num module doesn't know which size it needs to work on, and so its operation depends on the size of the number, and so it's not constant time because the size of the number leads leading zeros, and that can sometimes be vulnerability on its own. In addition to the big num module, there are also many structs that have a public layout, and we don't really say, oh, you should not look into how an AES context is constructed because, hey, your code might not work in a future version of the library. So things like the exact layout of an AES context will become opaque, like the way it currently is in the PSA API that you have a pointer to a cryptographic operation context in the PSA API. You don't know what it's pointing to. You just know that it's a pointer. And we're going to similarly make Mbed TLS context opaque. The low-level ECP module is probably going to be internal as well, though this is not completely decided. We're also going to take the opportunity of changing to 3.0 to remove all or most, probably all of the deprecated functions. There are, at some counts, there were 74 deprecated functions, and by 3.0, there'll probably be a few more, so we'll remove all of these. Generally, if these deprecated functions have an alternative, like it turned out that the function needed one more parameter, or some functions returning void, which will now return an error code. And we'll remove all of the functions that were missing this return code or that were missing a parameter. We'll also remove a few build options. We'll keep the ability to compile the library with just the modules that you need, but we'll remove some options to modules which only have a very minimal impact on code size and have a significant impact on testing, because testing all of these combinations of options is not really feasible, and so sometimes combinations don't work. We're also going to remove some functionality which made sense at some time, but doesn't really make sense in 2020 anymore, like deprecated TLS options, like compression that's been deprecated since the crime attack, and we're going to remove it from the library. Support for LSSL v3, versions of TLS that weren't even called TLS back then. That's also pretty much irrelevant in the world of 2020, and we're going to remove that. We're also going to remove some seriously deprecated cipher suites like RC4 and single des, keeping triple des for now, but not single des. Another kind, and then there's a second category of changes where we're not going to remove functionality, but we're going to change the way it works. An example is the way the library is configured. We're going to split the configuration into separate parts for the separate parts of the library. And we're also likely, we're looking into changing the way configuration works, that if you enable option A, that depends on option B, but you forget to enable option B, the current configuration system will give you an error at compile time. Hey, A needs B, but you didn't enable B. And we'd like to change this to a model where if A requires B and you enable A, then the configuration system is smart enough to understand that you want B as well. The default configuration of an SSL connection, if you just don't configure anything, will change to have more modern defaults without obsolete, but still kind of not completely removed ciphers with like triple des. Without RSA encryption by default, it'll still be available if you enable it explicitly, but RSA encryption For TLS, the one that has given you 20 years of Bleichenbacher attacks, that will be disabled by default. CBC ciphers, the one that have given you Lucky 13, that will be disabled by default. By default, you'll have AAD cipher suites and signature-based cipher suites only. And pre-shared keys if you're using pre-shared keys. Mbed TLS 3 will have a global RNG. You won't have to pass the RNG explicitly to every function. And then there's a lot more small changes, some of which can be categorized and some of which are just, well, this function was missing a parameter, now has a next function, so we remove the old variant and we only need the X function, except we'll remove the X suffix from the name. Some examples that can be categorized over the years, we've realized that some functions took arguments that they don't modify, but for whatever reason, they don't take a const pointer. So we're going to make arguments that should be const, we're going to make them const. We're also looking at tidying up the way init and free works. In Mbed TLS, there are functions called free, which, apart from Mbed TLS underscore free, don't actually free their argument. They just free the contents of their argument. And so in 3.0, for clarity, we'll probably rename those to something like Mbed TLS underscore foo underscore clear or Mbed TLS underscore foo underscore reset to indicate that they don't actually free the argument, they just free embedded resources. Another kind of change that affects a number of functions. Some functions assume that you know what you're doing, and you know that if you're calling a certain function with a certain algorithm, then you must pass a buffer of a certain size. And if you don't pass a buffer of the right size, the library will happily behave according to its documentation and assume that you pass a buffer of the right size. And then you get a buffer overflow. So instead of having that risk, we'll add an explicit size to the buffer pointer, which is something that's done systematically in PSA, but not done systematically in Mbed TLS at the moment. So if you pass a buffer that's too small, you get an error instead of, you get a runtime error instead of a buffer overflow. And there are many, many more small changes of this nature to many functions. The list of changes is currently on a private web page, and we will publish it hopefully in a few weeks. There's already a public page, but it's very incomplete compared to what we have internally. We've already started discussing some of those changes in the mailing list, and you can expect in the coming month to see many more discussions of that nature. So as a user of Mbed TLS, what will the impact be? Well, if you're using some of the low-level APIs, you're going to need to prepare for a change. We haven't settled yet whether low-level modules in like BigNum will be available in 3.0 or not. It might depend on your linker. Certainly, you can't expect them to be available forever. We're not going to just remove bignum.c in 3.0. It'll still be there, it'll still have the same interface, but we are likely to change bignum.c in 3.1 or 3.2 or 3.3. I don't know when it will happen, but if you rely on the current interface of Bignum, it's going to break at some point. Same thing for the low-level crypto modules, like if you're calling AES directly, or if you're calling SHA-256 directly, you should start calling MD or Cipher or PSA instead. If you just don't want to move, you're happy with what you have now, 2.x will be maintained for some time, for at least 3 years. That's the way we normally maintain. That's the duration we normally have for long time support branches. So for at least 3 more years after 2021, there will be a 2.x. It will have security fixes and bug fixes. It will not have new features. Generally speaking, it'll follow our current policy for long time support branches. Bug fixes, no new features, no increase in code size. If you do want to migrate, there will, of course, be documentation explaining, well, if you were using this function, here's what to use instead. We're considering other options. Will there be a header that you can include, which will enable some wrapper code, which will still give you the old API with obviously some overhead, but at least you'll have the old API. Maybe we can write a translation script. Anything better than documentation is likely to rely on somebody outside ARM jumping in and helping. In the current team, I don't think we'll have bandwidth to do more than documentation, but it would be great if people could help us and write at least a partial translator, at least a partial translation layer. When, well, Shebu has already more or less answered this. Sometime in 2021, around Q2 2021, we want to make a 3.x preview available. And I think it'll take at least 1 or 2 quarters to stabilize this branch. The point of the 3.x preview is you'll be able to see what's going on, but as long as it's a preview branch, it will still have unstable APIs. This lets us do things incrementally, like that's one day there'll be a new API for one module, and another day there'll be a change in another module, and there won't be any API stability for several months. And once all of the changes are done, we'll say, okay, this is final, this is stable, and this is 3.0. 3.x will have the usual review process, so you can expect the same level of robustness and security as you're used to in Mbed TLS. Just it will not have API stability until it's called 3.0. So if you're interested in new features, you should keep an eye on the changes in 3.x. And once 3.0 is out, you should adopt it. If you just want bug fixes, well, you can stay on 2.x for about 3 years.
I guess it goes without saying that all the PSA crypto will just continue to evolve in 3.x. So if people want to use that, it's better to move to 3.0, right? Or use whatever's there in PSA in terms of PSA crypto in 2.x.
Right, as I mentioned earlier, new features will be implemented in 2.x as long as 3.0 is not released. And once 3.0 is released, we don't expect to implement new features in 2.x. So whatever PSA crypto features are already present by the time 3.0 is released, well, those will be available in 2.x. And that includes the time when 3.x is only available as a preview. During that time, new features will still be available in 2.x. But once 3.0 is released, if there are new PSA features or new TLS 1.3 features or any other new feature that gets into Mbed TLS after 3.0 is released, it will only go into 3.1, 3.2, etc. So there's a question, will TFM jump to 3.0 as soon as possible? So Shebu replied, Shebu thinks that TFM will move to 3.0.
Yeah, my view there is for TFM, it's the PSA crypto APIs that's important. And I guess we just want to keep using the latest PSA crypto implementation. So wasn't thinking about parallelly maintaining 2.x and 3.0 integration into TFM. Unless there's a very good reason to maintain both. Today we just moved to the latest available Mbed TLS release just to pick up the latest, greatest PSA crypto support.
There's a question about PSA crypto APIs using PSA protected storage instead of internal storage. So basically, you can do that. The PS and ITS interfaces will deliberately have a very large common subset that has exactly the same function prototypes instead of function, except for the function names. So PSA, there's a PSA ITS get and a PSA PS get, and they're identical except for the function names. You can use PSA crypto with the PS versions of the functions. You just have to arrange to link them with the correct one. It's a bit cumbersome maybe to do it at link time, and Patch is welcome to improve this in PSA crypto. In Mbed TLS, I should say. As to will ITS get encryption or file encryption? Well, I thought that that was the difference between ITS and PS, that ITS, internal storage, was supposed to be physically protected storage, whereas PS, protected storage, was cryptographically protected storage. Because the PS key is stored in ITS, and if you need an ITS key, where are you going to store that key? And if you have storage that's protected by a hardware unique key, which is in some different storage technology, well, then what you're implementing is what we think of as protected storage. So I'm afraid that's all the answer I can give. I'm not familiar with all the deployments of PSA storage. If somebody is, can you please take the question?
I agree to what Jill just mentioned. That's my understanding as well. ITS is meant to be without encryption, and yeah, ITS or some sort of OTP or some storage is required if you were to have PS with encryption. And yeah, these are basically very similar APIs, but to be used in two different usage scenarios. Yeah, and in TFM, as many of you know, it's how we use it. We use ITS as the backend of crypto. Protected storage is a different A-road service, which is used for bigger data set encrypted storage on a off-the-chip flash or something. Okay, with crypto cell. Okay. Okay, at least the example implementation we have got in TFM, I think we don't use any sort of ITS there. We probably just use the OTPs. Yeah, probably I'm not qualified to answer that fully. We have got a TFM crypto cell integration, but there the interfaces are still the old Mbed TLS alt implementation. It doesn't use the PSA crypto driver interface or ITS as far as I know. Any more questions? Or we can jump to the last presentation. Thanks a lot, Gilles. I think this was a critical presentation. I really Mbed TLS was differently pictured when it was originally talked about in a blog back in the day. Hope this clarifies what 3.0 is all about and PSA crypto and how they overlap. Okay, so let's move to the last presentation then. We've got Dave, who's going to also talk about one of the most important topics of the day, how you can be a reviewer and how to contribute to your first batch or review it. Yeah. Dave, if you can share the slides.
Yeah, thanks, Shibu. Okay, can everybody see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name's Dave Rodgman. I'm the tech lead for Mbed TLS, and I joined the project middle of this year. So still lots of it's new to me, lots to learn. So this talk is focusing on being a reviewer and what people outside of ARM in the community can do to help review PRs from Mbed TLS. So you've always wanted to be an Mbed TLS reviewer. May have grown up wanting to be an astronaut, an athlete, but more likely you grew up wanting to be an Mbed TLS reviewer. And in that case, this is the talk for you. So as previously mentioned, we're keen to get external people involved as reviewers. So I'll give a bit of background on why that is, why we need that. I'll talk a bit about how to get involved as a reviewer, like practically what can you do if you decide that you do want to do this. And a little section at the end on how to actually conduct a great review. So the background, current state of play, we've got a graph here showing the median lifetime of a PR. And the x-axis is time, last 5 years or so. So you can see over the last 5 years or so, median lifetime of the PR has dropped. It was not very good, say 4 or 5 years ago. And we have worked at that. Particularly in the last year, we've made quite a lot of effort to ensure that we are responsive and we do pick up PRs quickly and handle them quickly. And recently, the last year or so, we've been holding steady at a median. I think it's about 12 days. However, the flip side of that is that the workload of handling all these incoming PRs is going up, which is positive because community are getting involved. We're getting PRs in from outside, but that's more stuff for us to respond to and review. And that's a similar view of number of PRs, showing number of PRs created per quarter. So it's kind of starting to pick up again, getting close to the peak. And the other aspect of review is that security libraries are quite tricky to review. If you have a bug in your security library, it doesn't just mean that it crashes or there's some functional problem with the behavior. There may be some very subtle bug that just weakens security a little bit. So you can't really detect that with a test. You really have to analyze PR manually, think about what it's doing, and understand whether it's introducing any issues. Also, as a security library, you have the risk that there may be bad actors who are trying to backdoor the project, which we have seen in other open source projects. And some of the PRs are very complex and require not just good programming skills, but also quite deep maths and crypto knowledge. So it can be quite challenging to fully understand what's going on. And so, yeah, not all reviewers will be in a position to review every PR if it requires some deep specialist knowledge. There may be a limited number of people who are able to review it, and that's fine. So currently, the way we operate is we require every PR, in order to be merged into the library, every PR has to have 2 officially approved reviewers. So we welcome reviews from other people who are not officially approved, but those do not formally count towards the tally needed to tick box and merge it into the project. And currently, all the official reviewers are ARM employees. Not all of them are directly working on the project or directly involved. Some of them are former project members, for example. We also have people outside of ARM who are contributing reviews, but not formally officially approved. So Silicon Labs are helping us out with reviews on some of the work that's relevant for them. David Brown at Linaro is working towards becoming a reviewer for us. And just generally in the community, we see reviews come in time to time. So how can we know when someone's ready to be a reviewer? There's a couple of aspects to this. So we, the existing maintainers, existing Mbed TLS core team, core community, need to have confidence that the person is competent, that they're writing quality code and that they can recognize good quality code and can recognize issues in PRs. And also that we can trust them to do a thorough job and to look for all the issues and flag issues that come up. So we can look for competence over time by just getting a sense of the quality of reviews that people contribute, the quality of the work, quality of the PRs they submit. Someone's trustworthiness, it's very tricky, but the key thing here is that we have this 2 reviewer system. So there's always a backstop in that it's never just down to one person. We don't have a single point of trust on code that goes into the project. And so there's a challenge for us, the Mbed team, to support the external community if you guys are interested in helping out with review. So what would that process look like? How to become a reviewer? So it could start with submitting some PRs to build involvement in the project. We're not specifying a fixed size or number of PRs. They could start small and progress to more complex areas. But it's a good way of showing understanding of the project and getting involved. Then obviously the next step is start contributing reviews. At first, as a unofficial reviewer, 2 official reviews are still required, but there is value for us in having an external review. We can see that someone's already ticked off a load of issues, and so that reduces the review workload for us. So it's still valuable to have that. There are no fixed targets in this process, so we're not saying you must have 5 reviews or anything like that. People could just contribute reviews. Probably we're expecting people will start with PRs, progress to reviews, but it doesn't have to be that way. We would generally look for contribution over a decent period of time to show experience with the project. I think it's unlikely that someone's going to do a couple of patches in a week and then a couple of reviews in a week, and then be at a point where we can say, yeah, we think this person's ready. It just takes longer than that to show experience reviewing kind of significant bits of work for the project. So I'm suggesting 3 months here, but it's kind of a vague sort of number. And then the process for that, for what actually happens, is someone will propose that we kind of anoint you as an official reviewer, and one of the existing reviewers or maintainers will second this. And if there's no disagreement, there's general support, then we will tweak the GitHub flags and make you an official reviewer. So this is it's a new process, and we will refine it over time, but that's our starting point for now. And the most important step in becoming an official reviewer is submit a review. I think quite often people don't feel particularly confident to start submitting reviews, may not feel expert enough, but I think the only way to get past that is just to start, contribute reviews. The team will be happy and supportive to get these reviews in. And if there are questions about the review process, we're happy to discuss via the mailing list. I've put a couple of links here as possible starting points. The first link just shows all the open issues, and you can find things that will need review in there. The second link is the same list filtered for stuff that is labeled as good first issue. So you'd expect these PRs to be simpler and probably more accessible for a new reviewer. So final section of the talk, just a few notes on what we might ideally look for in a good review. So we have a coding standards document, and obviously we expect PRs to conform to that, and when they don't, reviewers should point that out. Looking at other people's reviews is a good way of understanding what people normally call out in reviews, what kinds of things are people looking for. We do have some internal documentation that goes into more detail about a range of things that we'll typically look for, and we plan to publish that in due course. At a high level, Gilles gave a really good talk on this previously, which I've linked to here. So that talks about some of the kind of general philosophy of approaching a review. My takeaway from that talk was to approach the review approach PR from a bunch of different perspectives. Think as a gatekeeper, do we really need this? as a maintainer, what's the cost of having this in the code base? As a user, what value does this provide? As an attacker, break this. As a competitor, can you do a better implementation? Is this inefficient? Does it use lots of memory? And so on and so on. Think about the worst case scenario. So be a little bit negative, a little bit paranoid about the issue, about the PR. Does it introduce risk? And then the bottom two bullet points kind of balance each other a bit. As a reviewer, you have some responsibility for the quality of the PR. You are kind of signing off on it. But at the same time, there is also a second reviewer. So it's not all on one person. There's support there. So it's not a sole point of responsibility. And that concludes my talk. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? Appreciate it's a bit late for people in Europe and probably Asia as well. Hope there's nothing in the chat as well.
I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay. Yeah. Any last questions? So we have a few more minutes in case people wanted to raise anything that we haven't covered today, or on any topics on any of the presentations that was done today. Or was it a lot of information to consume that you're overwhelmed? Okay. If there are no more questions, we can close the call. Thanks for all the participation, considering it is quite early for some of you and quite late for some others. Again, please continue to engage in the Mbed TLS and PSA crypto mailing list, look at the roadmap, and more importantly, appreciate if you can help with reviews, contributions, because it's very difficult for such a small team to cover all the great things we want to achieve together.
Yep, and thanks to everyone, Scilabs in particular, for your presentations.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, hope that's a golden example for many more collaborations to follow. Thank you. Have a nice rest of the day or good night. Thank you.
Cheers, Shabu. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.